The hum of the cabin was a blanket over Nora Vukovic's thoughts. She'd been on site for 8 days, walking drainage fields at a coastal project and sleeping badly in anonymous hotel rooms. The rhythm of engines and the warm breath of the overhead vent pulled her under until a chime split the air and the mood of the aircraft shifted from drowsy to brittle. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your first officer. If there is anyone on board with flight experience, anyone with pilot training, please press your call button and wait for a flight attendant. Conversations stuck in throats. The man across from Nora lifted his mask and mouthed. Did he just say pilot? A child stopped tapping his tablet. Somewhere, a soda can hissed open and then didn't. The plane felt longer, narrower, as if the request had tightened every bolt. Nora's hand found the window shade to anchor herself. She didn't wear that life on the outside anymore. Those hours and sunsets and thermals, the proud, reckless years of winning glider competitions in the mountains. She turned towards steadier ground. Civil engineering, rain, mud, numbers. 10 years since her last cockpit. 10 years since the ridge lift had dropped and taken her friend with it. She'd folded flying inside her like a photograph she didn't open. A flight attendant swept down the aisle with a practiced smile that couldn't hide the ash of worry beneath. If you have piloting experience, press your call button. Her eyes scanned. They landed on Nora's steady stare for a second too long, as if recognizing steel. Nora looked at her hands. They were dry, not shaking yet. She thought of her mother's kitchen in Zagreb, of a voice message from her boss about Monday's briefing, of the tiny scar across her left knuckle from a tow line burn at 19. And she thought of the boy 2 rows up who was tracing the seam of his seat with his thumb, trying not to cry. She pressed the button. The light pinged overhead. The attendant stopped, switched gears into relief. I'm you. What experience do you have? Nora exhaled. Gliders. Years ago. Aerotow launches, ridge soaring. Sometime in single-engine pistons. No hits. Joe's smile trembled and then held. That might be enough. Come with me. As Nora unbuckled, an older woman in 21A caught her eye, nodding once with a look that said, "Thank you." It was like being handed a thread and realizing you were the one who had to pull. The forward galley smelled like coffee and warm plastic. Joe whispered as they walked. The captain had an allergic reaction. We're not sure to what. He's conscious but foggy. The first officer is flying, but we took a lightning strike 15 minutes ago. Some systems are glitching. Autopilot won't hold altitude. We need steady hands and an extra brain. Is bleed air normal? Any smoke? Nora asked before she could stop herself. Cabin's clean. Oxygen masks weren't deployed. We've got a nurse with the captain and an EpiPen already used. Another chime. Another set of eyes following Nora like she carried the last match. The cockpit door opened on a world that felt like a dream she'd had too often. Familiar shapes, different scale. The first officer, nameplate, E. Pierce, had a jaw set for war. The captain, Delgado, was propped back, ashen but breathing, blood pressure cuff squeezing his arm. A woman in scrubs, Amina, the nurse, looked up from the medical kit, nodded at Nora, then returned to her patient. Who are you? Pierce asked without malice, just velocity. Nora, glider pilot. Some single-engine time. It's been a decade. The confession tasted like cold metal. Pierce hesitated for half a breath, long enough to weigh the universe, then jerked his chin to the jump seat. Strap in. Talk me through what you see. She slid into the left seat, Delgado's seat, hands hovering, not touching. The panel was a cathedral of light and logic. 2 large primary flight displays, engine instruments steady, a constellation of annunciators. One was sulking amber, AP disc. Another quiet but deadly, blinked HYDB pressed low and then vanished. The air was warm, dry, too thin, too electric. Autopilot disconnected. I'm trimming by hand, Pierce said. His voice was held together by procedure. We took a strike. I've had intermittent static on Comm 1. Comm 2's clearer. Weather ahead is building. We're here. He tapped the NAV display, a white arrow sliding toward a line of yellow and red splotches. We're diverting to Ellison Field. Long runway. ATC wants us descending when able. Nora listened for the sky beneath the electronics. Pitch fell a hair high. Power was good. The yoke's tiny tremor traveled into her bones like an old language. Copy. Let's run a degraded automation flow, she said, surprising herself with how steady it sounded. You fly. I'll manage checklists and calls. Pierce's shoulders dropped a fraction. Deal. Captain Delgado, Nora asked, can you hear me? He flexed 2 fingers in acknowledgement. Amina murmured, breathing's better. Hives receding. You shouldn't fly. Understood. Nora keyed comm 2. Center, Flight 11-4, declaring pan-pan due to crew medical and systems anomalies. Request priority vectors to Ellison Field. Static hissed. A voice cut through. 11-4, Roder Panpan. Maintain present heading. Expect vectors to Ellison. Descend to flight level 310. Present heading 310. Pierce's eyes flicked to the yoke, then to Nora. Say it again, altitude 310. Nora confirmed, pointing so they wouldn't stumble. She tightened her harness until it bit. Threshold crossed. There was no going back to the aisle. They descended into a calmer layer. The jet shuddered twice and leveled, as if it too preferred hand flying to fickle automation. Nora read the QRH, quick reference handbook, with her thumb braced on the page. AP not available. Use manual trim. Monitor hydraulic B pressure. If pressure fluctuates, avoid unnecessary spoilers. Use flaps per landing data. She looked at the panel again. Hydraulic B remained steady, the glitch gone like a threat reconsidering itself. Copy. Let's plan a flaps 30 landing. Pierce said. Let's plan options, Nora countered. What's our current weight? He rattled off numbers. She back of the enveloped landing distance with the stale math in her head and a pen on her palm. Ellison's 12,000 feet. Even hot and heavy, we're good with margin. Crosswind. She gestured at the weather radar's bruise. Pierce called ATC, got the runway, wind, and a vector that felt like a promise. We can do this, he said, more to himself. Behind them, the cabin interphone chimed. Joe's voice filtered in. We have a passenger who says she used to work as an air traffic controller. Should I put her through? Pierce and Nora looked at each other. He nodded. Why not? A new voice arrived, calm as a metronome. This is Hygiene Park, retired ATC, Seoul, ACC. If you want, I can help coordinate with the cabin and keep a parallel log. Nora smiled, despite the adrenaline. Ms. Park, welcome to the team. Start 2-minute time calls and note any anomalies. Also ask if anyone has the Jeppesen app. Charts for Ellison. Joe came back fast. Teenage passenger in 19C has charts on a tablet. Patch him, Nora said before she could picture the insurance forms. Hi. A voice came, bright with terror and triumph. I'm Mateo. I do Microsoft Flight Sim. I've got approach plates for Ellison, runway 22. Mateo, Nora said, you're officially our ground desk. Read us the initial approach altitude for the ILS-22 and note the missed approach point. Mateo flicked pages. Initial at 4,000, glide slope intercept at Harks. Missed approach is climbed to 1,500 then, right turn to 3,000 direct, ELS VOR hold. Good, Nora said. We're not planning a miss, but knowing where to go buys us breath. Copy, Ms. Pilot. A grin lit Pierce's eyes. The cockpit felt wider, the world less sharp. People were not panic. People were cogs that lit when needed. 11-4, ATC said, descend and maintain 13,000. Expect vectors to final. Out of 310 for 13,000, Pierce replied. He looked out the windshield, clouds like continents, light carving rivers. You glider folks ever get used to air standing still? We get used to knowing it never does, Nora said, and the old map in her mind unfolded. At 18,000 feet, a low chime sounded and a master caution winked. Nora's heart joined the click. HYDB pressed low blinked again, then stayed. Pierce's left hand feathered the yoke. His right was already moving to the pump switches. Checklist, he said. She had it open before the word finished. Hydraulic be low pressure. Switches on. Monitor for leaks. If pressure remains low, anticipate increased control forces. Consider alternate gear extension. Pressure needle dropped, then rose, then steadied below the green, like a dog with an old limp. We'll assume flaps may be slow and spoilers grumpy, Nora said. Let's go flaps 20 unless you feel merry to 30. Agreed. Less drag, less strain. Pierce exhaled. We'll eat runway. 11-4. ATC called. Caution weather ahead. Moderate precipitation on final. Suggest a shallow intercept. Shallow intercept approved, Pierce said. Thanks. Nora keyed the cabin line. Joe, seat everyone. Anything loose, get it secure. Amina, status? Captain stable. Alert. I'll keep him seated and strapped. Copy. Ms. Parr, time check. 6 minutes since last vector. You have 21 minutes to touchdown if vectoring continues as advised. Mateo, Nora said, give us wind. 230 at 15, gust to 25. He added proud, right crosswind. Pierce grinned. Kid's good. He is, Nora said. So are you. He rolled the jet gently, like someone rotating a sleeping child. Why'd you stop? He asked, eyes on the horizon. Stopped, she said, already knowing he meant flying. There's always a story. She watched the clouds part in seams. Ridge day. A rotor broke wrong. We lost a friend. I told myself I was done breathing thin air on purpose. He nodded, once as if stamping a form. And now I remember I never really quit. They were given a turn to base. The ground rose in the distance. Airport lights like a necklace. The runway, a gray ribbon. Nora's thumb traced an invisible arc in the air, calculating. We're a little high, she said. That's fine. Shallow intercept. Localizer alive. Pierce murmured, voice lower, different. The ritual had begun. Glide slope armed. Gear down, Nora said. The lever thumped. 3 greens winked, then flickered. HYDB flickered too, petulant. Alternate gear extension? Pierce asked. Give it 5 seconds. Let gravity do what it's best at. Nora counted with Ms. Park's metronome. 1, 2, 3. 3 greens stabilized. There we go. Flaps 20, Pierce said. Speed checks. Flaps 20. The sound was slower, the flap motors clearly working uphill through syrup, but the gates were reached. The nose ballooned. He trimmed, steady as a surgeon. Final landing distance? He asked. Plenty, she said. We'll roll long, but we'll roll. 11-4, wind 230 at 22, gust 28. Cleared to land runway 22. Cleared to land, Pierce repeated. He lowered his voice. I'm going to keep it not or too fast for the gusts. Do it, Nora said. The picture through the windshield slid into its frame. The center line, the runway lights marching, the far edge shimmering in heat haze. Rain feathered the glass and swished away beneath wipers like songs brushed from memory. Approach stabilized, she called. Sync rate nominal. Speed good. Glide slope, he breathed. Localizer. Crosswind correction in. The jet bobbed. The gusset on the right, playful then rude. Pierce held it, crabbed, kicked gently. His hands were elegant, small corrections, no show. Mateo, Nora said, because she wanted his voice. Runway is 12,000 feet, he said immediately. Touchdown zone lighting is, Poppy on the left set for 3 red 1 white right now. You're slightly low. Poppy agrees with me, Nora said with a smile. We've got it. At 100 feet, the world narrowed. Engine whined like a note that had no end. Nora's pulse a distant drum. The runway's texture arriving all at once. She heard impossibly her old coach. Talk to the air, don't lecture it. Ask, don't demand. 50. Pierce intoned with the automated voice in his ear. 40. 30. 20. Eyes down the far end, Nora murmured. He flared a breath early, then held, then let it come. The mains kissed with a tire's whisper and then a firm promise. The spoilers thumped up. Sluggish but there. Reversers deployed like sighs. The runway dashed beneath them. White marks counting. Manual brakes, Pierce said. He pressed, modulated. Brakes are a little soft. We've got runway. Let roll. No heroics. They held centerline like a vow. Rain smeared the light. When they had slowed to human speed, Pierce eased them onto a high-speed exit. Nora felt the first tremor in her fingers then, the aftershock arriving only when the ground had agreed to hold them. 11-4, ATC said, the voice subtly different, warmer. Welcome to Ellison. Emergency crews standing by. Exit as able and hold short. Nice work. Pierce looked at Nora and laughed once, a single astonished bark. Nice work. Her mouth found a shape that felt like a half-remembered song. We did it. They stopped clear of the runway. Emergency vehicles glowed in colors that made the night seem carnival bright. Joe's voice came through tears. You're down. We're down, Nora said, and the cabin's roar, even from here, was a wave colliding with a cliff. A ground controller spoke in her headset now, clipped cheerfulness masking adrenaline. 11-4, cross runway 15, taxi to the emergency stand. We have medics ready. Do you require tow? Negative, Pierce said. We can taxi under our own power. As they rolled, Captain Delgado stirred more. He swallowed, voice rough. Who landed? Pierce jerked his thumb toward Nora. She shook her head immediately. We all did. You set us up by being here, even if you could only breathe. Delgado's smile was cracked but real. I owe you a coffee, and 100 apologies for scaring you. Take the coffee, Amina advised, palpating his wrist. He'll be grateful enough to tip well. The jet eased into the stand. When the engines wound down, a piece fell that felt louder than noise. Pierce took his hands off everything and looked at them as if they belonged to someone else. I'll never complain about line checks again. Nora unstrapped and stood too fast. The world rippled, caught itself. She touched the headrest with her fingertips until the deck steadied. A decade peeled off her like old varnish. Joe opened the cockpit door to light and faces. She didn't introduce Nora. She didn't need to. The passengers already knew. Applause swelled and then turned into the mess of gratitude. Words, tears, laughter with a wobble in it. A small boy stood at the front clutching a rubber airplane. Mateo hovered behind him, taller than she expected, freckles like constellations. You're Nora? He asked, reverent. Yeah, she said. He thrust the tablet forward. I kept the log like Ms. Park said. I wrote the winds, the altitudes. Want to see? The missed approach was. I do want to see, Nora said, meaning it to her bones. And I want to hear how you called those poppies like a pro. The boy with the rubber airplane reached out with his free hand, the way a child touches a cat to see if it will purr. Did you feel scared? He asked. Nora thought of the ridge, the friend, the photo she never opened. She thought of hydraulic B pressure and flickering lights and a voice from seat 21A counting minutes. She crouched so her eyes were level with his. I felt scared, she said, but fear doesn't get to fly the plane. We do. His face changed, the sentence finding a home. He pressed the toy in her palm. For you, he said, then fled, embarrassed at his own boldness. Nora turned it over. Molded seams, a cartoon smile painted under the nose. It weighed almost nothing in all of this. After medics took Delgado and signed off Amina's work with admiration. After Pierce filed a report and answered 8 radios at once after a mess. Park graciously waved away a dozen thanks by saying, we were all vectors today. The adrenaline thinned and left a hollow that filled with something else. The airline arranged a quiet room for the crew and the unlikely crew adjacent. Nora found herself at a long table with paper cups of water. Pierce sat opposite, elbows on knees. You sure you weren't current on a type rating? He asked, teasing poorly to hide sincerity. Positive, she said. Gliders and Cessnas. And memories. You should come back, he said lightly, but there was weight under it. The sky could use more people who know how to ask it nicely. Nora didn't answer right away. She looked at her phone. Messages from her boss, from her mother who had tracked the flight's diversion and was already halfway to prayer and soup. She typed, safe. Landed elsewhere. We'll call. Then she opened the photo she'd avoided for years. 2 teenagers at a mountain strip, wind-shredded hair, faces raw and alive. She didn't look away. She let grief and gratitude sit next to each other like wary relatives and noticed they didn't fight. Mateo emerged from the doorway, hovering. "Ms. Nora? My mom said to stop bothering you, but I wanted to ask, how do you not panic when all the lights blink?" "You don't stop the panic," Nora said. "You give a job." Mine was reading checklists and counting seconds. He considered that like it was a cheat code. "Can I write that down?" he asked. "Please," she said, and watched him sprint out to find a pen. The retired controller, Ms. Park, slipped into the chair beside Nora. "You flew well," she said simply, as if complimenting a fellow musician after a set. "If you decide to come back, it won't be because the sky demands you. It will be because you remember it's a place where you tell the truth." Nora looked at her, startled by how precisely that fit. "And if I don't, then tell the truth here," Ms. Park said, touching the table. "In streets that do not flood and culverts that hold." When they finally walked down the jet bridge, passengers brushed Nora's sleeve like she was a talisman. A man in a suit, a grandmother with a scarf of turquoise birds, a teenager with too much hair gel. They all had the same expression humans where when something impossible has just been revised into the plausible. Outside, storm lights slanted through after-rain air. Nora pressed the toy airplane into her pocket and called her mother. "I'm okay," she said, "and I think I'm going to book a lesson. Just one." She could hear her mother inhale, then laugh, the sound bright, a bell in a summer kitchen. "Of course you are," her mother said. "You can't keep the sky folded forever." Nora hung up and stood for a moment in the smell of tarmac and wet rubber and jet fuel that always made sense to her. She wasn't the woman she had been when she closed her eyes in row 17. She wasn't a ghost, either. She was a person who had remembered the exact weight of a yoke and the exact lightness of deciding to try. Fear would always ride along, a passenger who paid nothing and complained often. But it didn't get a window seat. It didn't get a say in a landing. As she walked toward the terminal, someone behind her called, "Thank you, pilot." She turned and lifted a hand, not to wave goodbye, but to mark a line in the air where the old stories ended and the new ones began. The sky was still there, exactly where she left it, waiting with the patience of horizon.